Hello again, everyone. This is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the NautilusDrydocks.com. Got another completed build for you, a big old Canadian submarine. I want to share it with you in just 1 minute. So what we have in front of me is an Oberon Class submarine. Now, this was a British-built submarine that they themselves used, and they also built for export. And there were several navies that utilized these boats, including the Canadian Navy, of which this is an example, the Okanagan. That particular boat was laid down in 1965. It was launched in '66 and commissioned in June of 1968, where it had an exceptionally long career. It was finally decommissioned in September of 1998. So the Canadians got their dollars worth out of this particular boat. This model comes from a company called OTW Designs out of the UK, and it is rendered in 1/48 scale with an overall length, if you do your math, of 74 inches overall. So it's a sizable boat. What I want to do with you in this video, we're going to go through the installation of the cylinder into the boat. I'm going to show you how this all works, some additional features that are built into it, and then we're going to finish up with a few minutes of footage that I took at the lake a couple of days ago for her maiden voyage. So let's get to it. So this particular RC submarine was originally built by a very talented builder by the name of Dwayne Hill, who resides up in Canada. The cylinder that powers the boat was scratch built by Dwayne, and it follows his standard design methodology. If we take a look at the front section here, we have two forward servos. One of them drives the bow retract, and the other one is the bow planes, the pitch control of those bow planes. We've got an air pump in there, the conduit that carries the signal and power to that forward section. The ballast section itself, this is, I'm going to say probably 10 or 11 inches in overall length. This is a hybrid ballast system, so it does use an air pump to displace the water in the ballast tank for normal emergence out of the water, but there's also a gas backup in here, an emergency gas backup system. So inside here you would put airbrush propellant, and in the extreme throw of the ballast servo, it depresses this small Schrader valve, blows gas into the ballast tank, expels all the water, and the boat surfaces. To drive all of that, we have a standard servo with a linear servo conversion on it. There's that little micro switch there for the air pump. That's what turns it on and off as that servo arm moves forward and backward. Got the two servos for the stern control surfaces, the rudder and the stern dive planes. We have a battery eliminator circuit in there that takes the main 12 volt power and knocks it down to 5 volts to power the receiver. We've got an automatic pitch controller, and we've got something called the Go Slow Go Right module from KMC Designs, and that slows down the retract speed of those forward dive plane retraction to make it more scale in appearance. Lastly, we've got our main drive motor there that runs direct through the stern, and the electronic speed controller that powers it. And that's basically what we're talking about here. Now you'll notice that it has this long cable sticking out the back, and the reason for that is because this particular boat is controlled with a 2.4 gigahertz radio transmitter. And that basically means that it needs to keep the tip of that antenna, the black part just at the very end, out of the water, and it lives way up here. And that means you can operate this at full submerged waterline with just the periscope sticking out, or in full surfaced waterline, or any time or place in between. So now that we've got all of that done, let's crack into the boat We'll show you what it takes to install the cylinder and check out all the functions. All right, one thing I love about Dwayne's boats is they are always exceptionally easy to get into, and this particular boat is no exception. All you need to do is rotate this rear kind of spring-loaded bolt 90 degrees. It pops up, and you lift up on the stern, slide it back, and away we go. Let's take a look on the inside here. You can see some details in here. This is the air hose, the intake for the ballast system that runs up into this like snorkel in the top of the sail. And then this forward hole right here is where we're going to put the antenna through. And as I said before, it goes all the way up into the top of this highest periscope so that you've got that maximum buffer when you're patrolling at periscope depth. Taking a look in the front here, we've got our bow retract mechanism and our forward dive plane. So it's in the extended position right now, and our bow planes are fully functional. You can see those working right now. When those bow planes are centered, that other servo that I was showing you, you'll remember it had a rotary motion with another dog bone adapter here. That simply rotates like this and this, and that's how it opens and closes the bow planes in there, and we'll show you that in operation here shortly. The thing to note about this, which is really interesting, the entire assembly tilts forward and back, and it uses that dog bone to maintain that linkage throughout. Going through the back, we got everything fairly standard. We've got all of our flotation foam, lead ballast as low down in the keel as you can get. This is a very, very stable boat, which is actually something you want because it's got such a massive flat sail. Not only does the wind tend to push it and try and get that boat tilted over, but when submerged at higher speeds, these large flat sails can do something, create something called sail-induced roll, which means as you turn, the boat will want to turn into the turn, banking it almost like an aircraft. You go too fast, and you can actually heel the boat over on its side. Your rudder turns into a dive plane, your dive planes turn into rudders, and it becomes very exciting to operate your boat. We've got some Velcro tabs here that hold the cylinder down once it's in place. And in the very back, we've got our control linkages for dive planes, for the rudder, and you'll notice that this is a dual screw boat, but it has the cylinder had a single shaft output, and so we got a little gearbox in here, some brass gears, and this works really, really well. It's very low friction. It is a little noisy though. I will say that, having it out at the lake, you're not going to lose track of it, especially when it's on the surface, because it's kind of clacking and clattering away as it goes. Of course, once you get submerged, it becomes perfectly silent, which is a good thing. All right, let's get to installing the cylinder, but before we can install the cylinder, we need to install the battery. And this is a big 3.8 amp hour sealed lead acid 12 volt battery. So what we're going to do here is drop this down. I know what I'm doing. And it's got an arrow. Look at that. Slides forward. That stops it from moving. Now we're set. Battery is in place. We got some, I just put some clamps on here because these Velcro straps are a pain in the butt. If they fall underneath your cylinder, you get it all set up and you're like, oh, where's my strap? So put these little clips on there just to keep them out of the way. We're going to put our cylinder in place, but of course before we do that we need our rear drive shaft, which is hanging out right here. Set that in the back of the boat, set it into the adapter, drop it down, move up to the front, pull the battery forward, get our forward drive shaft, get that in place, drop it down. All right, we've got the that forward linkage in there, making sure that that's seated properly. You can see that moves up and down. And with that being the case, we simply click that. Rear connections, they basically make themselves up. They snap into place. Now that that's all done, we can undo our clips. I'm going to take my wire, put them under that Velcro down and down. And this is all done, ready to go. Now what we're going to do before we put the top on, we're going to do a functionality test of the boat. So if you bear with me a second, we're going to turn our radio on, making sure that we're at center on the throttle there. Set that over there. And to power on the boat, you just simply connect this. So the GSGR goes through a little self-test there. Let's go ahead and test that. So we got our forward dive planes. Those are all working really, really well. And then if we want to retract them, there we go. Nice and smooth. Scale speed, everything works really good. All right. So we checked our forward functionality here. We can move more into the back. Let's check our ballast system out. This is vent. You can see the little vent just opened up there. Moving forward, the air pump should kick in. And then if we go further, it depresses that valve. And I don't have any gas in there right now, but it would be blowing gas if it was filled up at that time. Going into the back, we've got our rudder, left and right. And then we've got our stern plane override. You can see that working. If we center that, this is, as I mentioned, on a pitch controller. So as the stern goes up, the planes lift, push the stern back down, and vice versa. If it tilts up, stern planes go down, bring the boat back to level again. Last thing is our propellers, our throttle. So it's nice and smooth, but as you can hear, it's not exactly what you would call silent, especially when you give it a little juice. But I don't have any problem with that personally. I think that's really cool. All right, I'm going to unplug this and we're just going to go into the installation of the upper hull. So we're just going to take it here, set this out of the way. This gets hooked up onto the little nipple for the air intake. And of course I can't see what I'm doing here, but we're going to grab our antenna and feed it into here. Now it's important to get this up into that periscope, and it needs to come all the way up. You can see that popped all the way out to the top there. All right, so I'm gonna set the hull down. I'm gonna make sure all the cables are not pinched by the hull. Tuck them in place. Drop the hull down. There's lots of annular space. There's nothing's going to get pinched. This is a brass tube, and if this antenna falls down, or is not properly placed, I should say, because it won't fall down, the brass can affect the transmission or reception of signal. So you don't want that to happen. You want to have that protruding from the top. That done, basically, the boat would be ready for the water. All right, as per usual, we are going to end things off with a little bit of a lake run out at the pond where I was about 2 days ago, where this boat had its maiden voyage. It is exceptionally docile and easy to operate. The footage that I got of the boat, I was taking myself as I was operating and diving it with one hand. So that's kind of how easy and docile the boat is to drive. It will also maintain periscope depth virtually hands-free, which is pretty awesome. That's why I love big boats, by the way. They tend to do that a lot more easily than the tiny boats do. Turning performance is actually really, really good. As you'll see, the reason being that both the dive planes and the rudders are aft of the propellers. And so you get instantaneous reaction to those inputs because you got that prop wash flowing over it at all times. With the modern boats, those control surfaces are ahead of the prop, so you need to be moving through the water quickly in order for them to come into play. So without any more conversation, we'll let you take a look at the video. You can determine whether or not it's cool. I think it certainly is. I'm excited for the owner to get this boat. It's going to be heading off to Australia, of all places. I guess the Commonwealth countries will share this common interest in this boat platform, because the Australians did run, I think, 7 of these boats during the Cold War era as well. I'll leave you with that. Again, my name is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the NautilusDrydocks.com. Thank you for joining me, and we will catch you next time.